Hi everyone, some of you might know me, my name's Eric and I'm an artist on Crowfall. Today we're going to be looking at some of my character creation process for Crowfall, and specifically we're going to be taking a look at the Lady Confessor, so let's get started. What we're looking at here is a program called ZBrush. It's a sculpting program. Some of you might be familiar with it, some of you might not be. And basically what it allows you to do is kind of work in 3D in a way that you would with, say, clay or any kind of traditional sculpting. Whenever I start a character, I like to jump right into the face, and in this instance I was able to grab one of our other faces to use as a base, so I think this was the Templar face, and kind of just grab that and start shoving stuff around to get started. And so I kind of take the base and then I take a concept from Dave or Larissa or Allison and try to match the look of the character to their concept. So as you can see, I'm taking the hair and I'm kind of mushing it around and kind of blocking it out, matching the concept and figuring out what I want to do with it. I'm able to kind of just jump around the face and push out areas and smooth areas and rough areas out and kind of just start to block in the shapes and the forms and figure out what this character is about and how old she is and what her demeanor is and things like that. So that's kind of what we're taking a look at. One of the really cool things about ZBrush is you can mask areas off and you can kind of smooth around them and work around them, and it's very quick and iterative. So, you know, maybe some of you might be familiar with Max or Maya, where you're kind of doing traditional modeling and it's a bit more slow and methodical. ZBrush isn't like that at all. You just kind of grab shapes, pull things out, push things in, build stuff up, and it's really cool. If some of you are familiar with ZBrush, some of the brushes I like to use, I use about 8 of them, and those brushes are the clay brush, the clay tubes brush, standard brush, the Damien standard brush, which you can find online, the move tool, obviously, trim dynamic, inflate, and snake hooks. And those are pretty much all the brushes that I use for everything. Those allow me to build up forms really quickly. They allow me to flatten shapes out and work on hard edges and stuff like that. And it's really great. So you can see that I tend to jump around a lot, and I'll always keep coming back to the face because I see little things that bother me with it, things that could be improved. I'm getting feedback from Dave or Todd or other artists too, and kind of just slowly working on it. She kind of looks surprised right here. It's funny, but I always jump back to it. And then I get kind of bored, or I'm like, oh man, I'm sick of working on this part, and I'll jump around to something else. And that's kind of why you see me jump around a bit. You'll also notice that I tend to switch the way it looks, the material of it, quite often. And some other artists might think I'm crazy. I don't know, but I kind of like to just try out different materials and stuff because they give a different perspective of what the model looks like. They kind of change the shading and the lighting on it and stuff, and it helps my eyes kind of see it in a new light. So I'll sometimes look at it gray, I'll look at it in colors, sometimes I'll put some paint on it and stuff like that. And so kind of what we're taking a look at is me just jumping around to different parts of the armor and kind of blocking stuff out. I never try to polish things too quickly. I like to get everything really rough and kind of just start getting the shapes there so I can look at the silhouette of the character. I can get feedback from Dave and Todd and kind of see if I'm going in the right direction with the character and we're kind of getting the personality that we want and stuff like that. And then once I'm happy with that and everyone seems like things are going in a good direction, I'll start to kind of detail. And just like with the face, I hop around a lot. Like I'll work on the hair for a little bit. I might work on the gauntlets or the chest plate and stuff like that, and just keep iterating until I'm happy with things. And so we're taking a look at me polishing the hair here. I'm kind of just blocking in the big shapes, getting those big, large chunks of hair. And then once I'm happy with those, I kind of get smaller and smaller into more detail. And I basically do that with every single piece on the character. So I start really blobby and then figure out what the major forms are, like this wrist guard. If it has some fancy trim or shapes and stuff, I kind of block those out. Adjust the the shapes and make sure things look good, they match the concept, stuff like that. Make sure that things are nice and round. And I always work in that iterative way where everything's super blobby at first because I'm just trying to get the large shapes. I'm not focused about the detail. And then once the form is kind of there, then I start to smooth things out. I start to refine things, make sure things are nice and sharp, stuff like that. And everybody's different. This is just kind of my process, and I really like ZBrush, and I try to do everything in ZBrush. Some people like to hop back and forth, where they'll do a little bit in Maya, then they'll jump back in ZBrush, stuff like that. But this works for me, and I feel like the more I can do in one program, the better. It's faster, and each new character I learn a little bit more, and I learn new techniques and stuff. And so it's a process that works for me. So you can kind of see that we've taken the wrist guard now from that blobby thing we seen a little bit ago and refined it, made it kind of nice, and then I can go and position it on the character and see if it looks good, see if the size is right, stuff like that. Now we're going to take a look at one of the ways to make chainmail in ZBrush. So basically I have this arm, and I was able to find this alpha texture online of chainmail, and I'm able to basically apply that on a whole surface. And it repeats, and I kind of can figure out how much detail I want the chainmail to have, the scale of it, the depth, stuff like that. And it starts to look pretty cool. So you can see that we've skipped ahead quite a bit here, and the same way that I was working on the hair or the wrist guard, I kind of just applied that technique to every piece individually. I actually did record the entire thing of this video, but we didn't think you'd guys want to watch 2 hours of me working on a character, so we kind of condensed it and just picked a few pieces. So that's kind of what we're looking at. But yeah, I would recommend anyone who's interested in 3D and stuff to take a look at ZBrush, because it's really powerful and it's really fast, and it's the type of thing that you can look at if you've ever sculpted or you've done traditional art. It's easy to kind of look at ZBrush and translate those concepts to 3D rather than, Max or Maya, where you're modeling in a more traditional fashion. So once everything's been blocked out and things are kind of set in stone in terms of their shapes and their polish, I can go in and start detailing and adding, I guess what you would call personality. So I'm going in and adding dings and dents and scratches and wear on the armor and stuff like that, and really refining the shapes and cleaning stuff up and making sure that it looks good. So I'm going in on some of this detail on the back and kind of making it nice and sharp and clean. I'm trying to think about what material it might be, so I'm giving it some wear and tear and just kind of making sure things look good, adding some seams and detail and stuff like that. Making sure the arms fit in there. And then as I get farther along, I break pieces off. So like at first I might just make the whole character out of one big piece of clay, but as I move forward I break them into pieces so that it's easier to kind of focus on each individual section without getting too caught up in everything else. So some of you might have seen the male Confessor that we put out a couple weeks ago. And then more recently, you guys might have seen the armor customization sheet that Dave put out. And so if you were to compare the armor on this character versus the male Confessor we put out, the male Confessor, his armor is maybe a little bit of a lower quality armor set, or like a more of a noob armor set versus hers. Her set that she has here is probably one of the fancier ones, and you can kind of see it's got a lot more detail on it versus the male Confessor's stuff like that. So now we're towards the end here, and you can kind of see that I've pretty much finished the model. Everything's detailed nicely. I've gotten feedback to figure out what needed work and stuff, and after all that, here's the result. Thanks for sticking around and listening to me ramble and seeing a bit of how we make characters on Crowfall. Thanks for watching.